Jeremy Allen was annoyed with his little Qingmei, but since she committed suicide, he has changed and become infinitely indulgent to her. Even when she scratched my face, I just protected her behind me. She's dying. What are you doing with her? So I didn't care about it anymore. Quietly departed from his world, until late one night, he brushed up on the most powerful good brother in the circle and officially announced his relationship. Dressed in a well-made men's shirt, I snuggled into the arms of a tall, handsome man and kissed the side of his face. It was raining heavily that night. Jeremy Allen went crazy and knocked on his door. Baby, I know you're deliberately angry with me. Can you come out and let's talk? Jeremy Allen has an annoying little plum. On every date, she always went out of her way to get us to take her. It annoyed him. On this day, I went with him to see a new movie. Along the way, Alberta George had already made 3 phone calls to harass her. Jeremy Allen didn't hesitate to block her wishes. He rubbed my head and said, "Don't worry, I'm a person with a girlfriend, and I'm sure I'm going to keep my distance from my childhood sweetheart." As soon as the movie ended, a strange call came to his mobile phone. Pressed answer, but the haunting voice of his little childhood plum Alberta George came from the other end. "Brother Jeremy Allen, where are you? I said I was dating my girlfriend. Don't call me anymore. Don't you understand, people?" Her voice was full of heavy crying. "Wait, don't hang up yet. I really have something very important to with you." Jeremy Allen hesitated, still cut off the call. "It's just that the brows are tightly wrinkled. Seems to be bothered by something." I asked him if the dress I tried on looked good. After asking him several times, he came back to his senses as if he had just woken up from a dream. "You look good. You look good in anything." I changed back into my old clothes. "Why are you so upset and worried about her?" He was stunned. He looked down and kissed me on the forehead. "I'm worried about her, and you're so absent-minded. Leave her alone. Be a good one." And our date continues. 9 o'clock in the evening. There is a fireworks show by the moat. Brilliant fireworks bloom in the eyes of countless people. I took a picture of Jeremy Allen by the arm, and after a few shots, the phone in his pocket started vibrating again. This time it was Alberta George's mother, who called. I don't know what she said on the other end of the phone. Jeremy Allen's pupils jerked, and his face turned pale. "Okay, Auntie, I'll go over now." I asked him what was wrong. "Alberta George committed suicide. I have to rush to the hospital now." "How could she kill herself?" "Just because you don't answer the phone and ignore her and commit suicide. This person is a little too extreme." He rubbed his hair irritably. "I don't know, but I've got to go over anyway. Do you want to come with me?" Reluctantly, I was curious. What new tricks is this Alberta George up to? Pushing open the ward, I saw Alberta George's eyes were red, and she had a circle of gauze wrapped around her wrist, and she straightened up with some difficulty. "Brother Jeremy Allen, you are finally here." Then he hugged him as he approached the bed. "I knew you cared about me. This image is very uncomfortable for me." Jeremy Allen didn't push her away, and sighed with some hatred. "Alberta George, do you know that you are very vexatious? And it is very nave to commit suicide for me. I'm not killing myself for you. I'm..." As she spoke, her red and swollen eyes suddenly filled with tears, and she looked at me timidly. "Sister, can you go out first? I just want to tell my brother about this." I waited at the door of the ward for about 10 minutes. Jeremy Allen came out with a solemn face. "I'm not curious at all about her so-called secret. All I care about is when I can leave. Are you done talking? You can go back. I'm a little tired after a long day." It's not that I'm cold-blooded. It was Alberta George's phone bombardment and deliberate harassment during this time that ruined all my good feelings about her. And the first time Jeremy Allen took me to meet her, she took the initiative to shake my hand, smiling brightly, but secretly squeezing my hand with all her might. The little trick is indescribably nave. "Alberta George has stomach cancer," Jeremy Allen said suddenly. I felt a thump in my heart. For a while, I was a little skeptical about the truth of this matter. The reason why she committed suicide was because she felt that she was a drag, blamed me for not receiving her call today. She could at least find someone to talk to. She was originally a single-parent family. If it weren't for me, she wouldn't be so desperate enough to think that she was a drag bottle to commit suicide. I can't rely on you for this, I reassured. And no one could have imagined this, but Alberta George. She's relied on me since she was a child, and treats me as an older brother. But I'm damn that I don't care much about her since I've been with you. A cold wind blew through the window at the end of the hallway. Something was slowly cooling in my mind. I didn't speak. Jeremy Ellen didn't notice anything. His head bowed, trapped in deep self-reproach and torment, and he didn't seem to listen to anything at this time. At this moment, Alberta George's delicate voice came. Brother Jeremy Ellen, can you accompany me tonight? I'm not really trying to annoy you. Or, it's my mom. She has to work the night shift at the supermarket and doesn't have time. It's okay. I'm here with you, not going anywhere. It started to rain outside the window. I looked at my watch. I'm going back. Then you go back first. He was bending over Alberta George and didn't look at me. The girl's eyes were locked on him, and her gaze was attached. If the man in front of me wasn't my boyfriend, I'm afraid I'll be touched by this heartwarming scene. It's 10:30 in the evening, I reminded him. Jeremy Ellen, are you going to let me go back alone? Alberta George muttered quietly. Well, sister, I usually don't finish my part-time job until 11 o'clock in the evening, and I always go back by myself. Oh, I glanced at her. It's your business that you don't have a boyfriend to send you, so you don't need to inform me. Jeremy Ellen frowned. He took out his phone and flipped through the address book. Okay, I'll ask Drew Richards to send you back. He's my brother, my son's brother, and he's usually very idle. Drew Richards. When he was in college, he was the most influential person in A, and he was also the eldest young master in the circle of the powerful in City A, and Jeremy Ellen now works in the head office of the Richards family group. Brother, what are you doing? Come out and do me a favor. On the other end of the phone, the man's voice was lazy. I'm going to sleep at this point, and I'll talk about something tomorrow. He went to bed so early. I didn't expect it, but I didn't have the interest of harassing people late at night, and I said to Jeremy Ellen, forget it. I can go back myself, and you won't bother anyone. Jeremy Ellen was about to hang up when he heard Drew Richards ask, wait a minute, what do you want me to help you with? You come here to send my girlfriend home, and I'll invite you to dinner when I get back. Do you think it's okay? Yes, send me the location. This man said that he was so sloppy when he said that he would like to eat Venus Surrey. You wait for him here, and I will accompany Alberta George first. Jeremy Ellen touched my head soothingly, then turned and went into the room. I felt a sullen feeling in my heart that I had nowhere to vent, and I was scurrying around. Jeremy Ellen often said to me that Drew Richards was a prodigal son in love. That's why he's so relieved about Drew Richards sending me home. This was unexpected to me. Jeremy Ellen also said to me, firmly, Drew Richards is usually a good person, but he is still very reliable in this aspect of life, so you can rest assured. Drew Richards came in faster than I thought. The man had particularly eye-catching eyes, a loose button at the top of his black shirt, broad shoulders and long legs, and a bit of cynicism at the end of his eyes when he smiled. I beckoned to him. Drew Richards, here, Venus Surrey. HMM. I nodded. I'll trouble you later. He scoffed. You're welcome. I went into the room to find Jeremy Ellen. Alberta George hugged his arm tightly and smiled at me when she saw me come in. Sister, you're not gone yet. I ignored her. He said to Jeremy Ellen, who was sitting next to him. He's coming to pick me up. I'm leaving. Dude. Jeremy Ellen lifted his chin at Drew Richards behind me. Take care of my girlfriend. Drew Richards smirked. Don't worry. Take care of it. I don't know if it's my delusion. I sensed that his tone sounded like something was there. He took my bag. Let's go. I'll send you back. When I got to the underground parking lot, Drew Richards pulled the door open for me. Thank you. I sat down. He went around to the other side and got on the main pilot. I was still thinking about what had just happened in the hospital, and I looked out the window with some distraction, but I didn't hear him reminding me of my seat belt. The next second, the tip of my nose overflowed with the very light sandalwood agarwood, and the man leaned over to fasten my seat belt for me. I lowered my eyes for a moment, and slammed into his dark and deep eyes. Venus Surrey, is it fun to pretend you don't know me? My chaotic thoughts converged instantly. Smile at him. Long time no see. Brother. After my parents divorced, my mom sent me to her best friend's house. That's Drew Richards' house, where I lived for 10 years, from the age of 10 to 17. Drew Richards is a year older than me. During this time, I kept calling him my brother. In the second semester of my sophomore year of high school, my parents remarried, and I moved out of his house. It just so happened that Drew Richards was also in his third year of high school that year and went to college in another place. After that, we rarely saw each other, and it was only after I was with Jeremy Ellen that I met him again at a party between their brothers. He has become more temperamental than before, with a black shirt, broad shoulders and a narrow waist, and his swaggering appearance still attracts many girls to look at him secretly. It's just that the attitude towards me is completely different from before, cold and alienated. I thought he didn't remember me as a person. I don't remember my sister, who used to go to the third year of high school, every day after school to wait for him to go back. That's why I kept pretending I didn't know him. I just didn't expect him to come and pick me up today. Remember my brother? The streetscape slowly receded, the dim light and shadow of the street changing at his cold white finger bones. Remember? Why don't you remember? On the contrary, you didn't ignore me when you saw me that day. He chuckled and didn't answer directly. Venus Surrey, you don't seem to have a good eye for a boyfriend. I glanced at him. Oh, you have a good eye for a girlfriend. I'm sorry, I'm single, so I don't have this problem. I immediately didn't believe it. Are you single? True or false? When he was in high school, he was very popular with girls at school. Love letters are received every now and then. Thanks to his blessing, many girls will send me food to win me over. When I was a junior in high school, it didn't take long to hear my mom and his mom on the phone. Said he had a girlfriend in college. For this reason, I hid under the covers and cried for several days. So, now that he's single, I'm 100% skeptical. What reason do I have to lie to you? Yes, when I got out of the car, I noticed that the door wouldn't open. Don't add a wish it message and then go. Shortly after I got home, I got a call from Jeremy Ellen. Have you arrived home safely? When you get home, you really don't go back at night. Don't go back. Alberta George has no one to take care of. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about me, if you rest early. After taking a shower, I swiped to Alberta George's circle of friends. A bit of a surprise. It's a bit to be expected. After all, when I added her before, the circle of friends she set up was not shown to me. Nothing compares to your company. The accompanying picture shows Jeremy Ellen sleeping in front of her hospital bed, and next to his head, there is a hand of her, yes, and there is an indescribable pride between the lines. At the same time, there were several announcements in my circle of friends. Drew Richards liked my past moments, but skipped the photos and couples I posted when we were together with Jeremy Ellen. I don't know what he means. A few days later, Alberta George was discharged from the hospital. According to her description, she was already in the advanced stage of stomach cancer, and the doctor advised her to stop treatment and eat and drink. To do this, Jeremy Ellen pushed off a large part of the work, said that she would spend her few days with her. At first, I endured it. After all, The dead are the greatest. But I found out that Alberta George wanted all of Jeremy Ellen's free time. Several times I had dinner with him, and Alberta George was just a phone call away. He hurriedly apologized to me and left me to dry. A few times later, I clashed with him. She's been around for a while. Wouldn't it be better for you to let her stay with her family? Her family doesn't care much about her. She comes from a single-parent family. I think you can understand. I understand a fart. It's okay for you to accompany her occasionally. It doesn't matter. But you don't have to be on call like a nanny, right? Is there a sense of boundary? She's my younger sister, who grew up watching her grow up, and she has stomach cancer, and needs someone to accompany her. So you can't help but be. Alas, he said and stopped. Forget it. I don't want to quarrel with you, and you'd better not stir things up. Don't rely on me for your own problems. He scratched at his hair in frustration. I can't help it. Venus Surrey, do you understand me? She's only been around for a month or two, and I promise you, I really just treat her as a sister. I don't want to care about you. You love to accompany her and accompany her. Don't inform me. That morning over the weekend, I got a call from Jeremy Ellen. Didn't you say you wanted to go to Disney? Yes. Hello, sister. The matter is settled. Just when I thought he had realized his mistake and wanted to make amends for me, his next sentence was, it just so happened that Alberta George also said that she wanted to go. Do you want to come with us? If you want to go, I will buy an extra ticket. I was immediately out of breath. With them? Look at what is said. Dare to just take her and pick me up by the way, listening to me as if I was the superfluous person. I'm not going. Why? Haven't you always wanted to go? He used to have a pretty quick brain, but since Alberta George committed suicide, it seems to be rusty. Oh no. Who's going to Disney with a sister? At this time, Alberta George's somewhat aggrieved voice came from his end. My sister is not going. Is it because she is prejudiced against me? Or do you mind my sick? Jeremy Ellen, it's not prejudice. It's that you kept calling me at the time, and she inevitably thinks about it. Alberta George said aggrievedly, forget it, brother Jeremy Ellen. I know it's useless for me to say anything, or you two should go. I'm like this anyway. You don't have to worry about my feelings. Upon hearing this, Jeremy Ellen felt that he really deserved to die. Don't say such stupid things. Venus Surrey can find time to accompany her later, but you and I have to accompany you. I hung up and didn't want to listen to them tugging around my phone anymore. My heart throbbed faintly, and I wanted to vomit. He didn't message me again for the whole day. In the evening, I brushed up on Alberta George's 9-square grid again. Basically every one. She took his arm and rested her head on his shoulder. The intimate appearance is like a young couple in love, the copywriter said, or you are the best for me. There is also her own comment below. Don't guess in the comment area. This is not an official announcement. This is my childhood sweetheart's brother. But the person who took pictures of us at Disney today said that we are a good match. Ha ha ha. I almost forgot that this rat poop was still lying in my friends list, and I deleted her wish it. At the beginning of the year, Jeremy Ellen bought a car. He promised me that he would come and pick me up from work in the future. It's just that he hasn't been here once these days, and my gossipy colleagues have asked me if I had broken up. I only replied to them with 2 words. It's almost there. After sadness, only disappointment keeps accumulating. That's not what Alberta George was aiming for, after all, but I don't want her to succeed so quickly. At this time, the wish it message, ding dong, sounded. It was a voice message from Drew Richards. Did you have dinner? I don't know how to cook. Usually Jeremy Ellen picks me up from work and takes me to dinner, but lately I've been eating takeout for days on end. I was tired of eating, and I couldn't find anything I was interested in after 10 minutes of swiping the takeaway software. I haven't eaten yet. I'm ready to order takeout. At home? Yes. If you're at home, I'll pick you up now and go eat something delicious. Takeout is unhealthy. If it was normal, I would most likely refuse. But now, I don't seem to have a reason to say no. He has a good sister to accompany him. Who doesn't have a good brother? Okay, then you can pick me up. Drew Richards came over at a fast pace. Come down. The man wore a casual coat today. Her hair was lazy and casual, and a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. When she saw me, I suddenly thought about high school. At that time, I used to wait for him at the door of his classroom, and when he finished his evening study, I rode my bicycle home. The classmates in their class all knew about my relationship with him. One by one, his brothers came out. I'll hear a sister in a voice. Drew Richards laughed and scolded in the back. Die on the other side. When did my sister become your sister? Then he rubbed my head, and put his arm around my shoulders and walked downstairs. Don't mess with my brother. You know, I won't admit it. How many years have passed? I put away my thoughts and smiled at him. Brother, well, what do you want to eat? It's all right. During the meal, Jeremy Ellen messaged me. I was at Disney all day yesterday. I was so tired that I came back and fell asleep in bed. Baby, what are you doing? You shouldn't be angry, right? I really want to laugh. He's degraded to the point where I can't even notice if I'm angry or not. Only replied, break up. Then I put the phone on the side. Drew Richards asked me, what's wrong? It's nothing, just broke up. You were right that day. I can't choose a boyfriend. The man smiled faintly. The warm light sprinkled on his eyebrows, and his appearance was particularly gentle at the moment. You can find a creature like a boyfriend, but you can't find a husband, he said, especially Jeremy Ellen. It's a good thing to break up early. I nodded, thinking of something. Ask him, but is that how you treat women? No, that's what I said. He thought for a moment. Men don't love themselves, just like, it's like a rotten cucumber. I spoke the second half for him. I laughed. You still know this? It's a bit of a thing. So, don't misunderstand me. It's weird. Jeremy Ellen told me some time ago that Drew Richards was a prodigal son in love. Actually, I didn't believe it at the time, but Jeremy Ellen was so sure that I was skeptical. After all, he did have the hard conditions to attract bees and butterflies. Leave work the next day. My colleague came up to me and said, help, there is a super handsome guy under the company building, and my heart is moved by this married old girl. I didn't care. Really, how handsome? Hugely handsome, and to be honest, several times more handsome than your boyfriend. After that, she showed me the photos she had taken secretly. But I guess 80% of them are here to pick up their girlfriends. The man held his black shirt upright, his eyebrows were grim, and he lowered his eyes to look at the mobile phone in his hand. This isn't Drew Richards. Downstairs, I saw the familiar and unfamiliar figure from a distance. Hey, handsome. He smiled and walked towards me. I haven't seen you for 2 days, so it's not too big or small. No, you don't know. You single-handedly overturned our company's chatter. I still remember the big recess in high school. Drew Richards would pass by my school building when he went to the commissary, and he would always come up to me and feed me good food. Every now and then, there will be a lot of movement on our floor. When he left, I gave the good food to my friends, and they sighed as they ate. Venus Surrey, I'm going to be jealous of you. Your brother is not only a school grass, but he is so kind to you. Woo woo, I've got a face. So many years have passed in a flash. The man was still recruiting as always. So, why are you here to pick up your girlfriend from work? He looked at me. Come and pick you up. He took me to dinner that night, and we talked for a long time, and soon the estrangement we had when we first met was gone. Pick me up from work. I tilted my head to look at him. Is that good? What's that? He scoffed. There were a couple of messages from Jeremy Ellen. After I broke up that day, I didn't pay attention to him anymore. Didn't we agree that no one was allowed to say the word break up? I know you're playing a tantrum, but I absolutely don't agree to break up. Don't you reply to Weshit? Bo. I also know that you blame me. Blame me for not accompanying you. Blame me for not keeping my promise to pick you up from work. So don't worry. I've found my brother to take my place for a while, and I'll pick up Alberta George these days when I'm with him. Then there are a couple of love you memes. This solution is unprecedented. My expression can only be described in 7 words. The old man in the subway looks at his phone. Reply to him, it's good if you're happy, I'm fine, but you know my relationship with him, right? Jeremy Ellen then replied, yes. Drew Richards told me that you have lived in his house for 10 years, and that's why I am relieved that he must take care of you as a sister like I did to Alberta George. It's hard to say. I put my phone away, turned around and asked Drew Richards, so, Jeremy Ellen asked you to pick me up. You can understand it that way. He hooked his lips and tapped his knuckles on the steering wheel. You cannot understand it that way. I was a little confused, and he turned to look at me. What? You don't like me to pick you up? Happy. Why not? Didn't you pick me up from high school before? But you were riding a bicycle back then. Yes. You were timid at that time, and every time you sat in the back, you pulled the hem of my clothes, and after a semester, the short sleeves of my school uniform were almost up to my knees. Ha 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 ha. How can you say such an exaggeration? However, the happiness at that time was quite simple. When I sat on the back seat of the bicycle and went downhill, the wind was blowing on my cheeks, and my heart was extremely excited. In the days that followed, Drew Richards was very punctual to pick me up and take me to dinner. Jeremy Ellen felt like the world had evaporated, and I didn't bother to interfere with him anymore. Until half a month later, on the night of my birthday, Jeremy Ellen suddenly appeared on my doorstep. He was holding my favorite durian in his left hand and a birthday cake in his right hand. He smiled and said to me, if you don't open the door, I'm going to be kicked out of the property. You smell too much. As soon as the things were put down, he came and hugged me. I coldly pushed him. My colleague celebrated me in the company during the day. You, so hard-mouthed. How can a colleague compare with a boyfriend? Really, it's not good for me this time. I haven't come to you. In fact, I want to wait for your birthday, this time to coax you well. Fool. Do you think I forgot your birthday? Don't come with me. Don't go with your good sister. Not with her. Because, he said, pausing, she's coming to celebrate your birthday with me. There should be some misunderstanding between you, and I would like to take this opportunity to resolve your previous misunderstanding. I haven't reacted yet. The next second, Alberta George jumped in through the door like a stone monkey. Happy birthday, sister. All I heard was a bang. The fireworks in her hand blew up the crumbs all over the ground. At this moment, I felt that the air that was not very sweet was even more suffocating. Since she wants to act, then I will accompany her to play a play in the end. I know you've always misunderstood me, your brother Jeremy Ellen's favorite person, and I'm really embarrassed that I've been dominating him for so long. As she spoke, her eyes suddenly filled with tears again. I'm sorry, I'm a little incontinent. Jeremy Ellen took the initiative to pull out a tissue and wipe her tears. The movements are too skillful. Don't cry, Alberta George. Your sister Venus Surrey is the kind of person who is unreasonable. I folded my arms and looked at her quietly. Seeing that I was unmoved, she continued, after I leave, you will be the only one left with Jeremy Ellen. Okay, it's my birthday, not your apology. I didn't feel much fluctuation in my heart, but Jeremy Ellen's eyes were red from the words. He said to me, you make the cake first, and I'll go open a durian first. Then Alberta George said, I'll cut the cake. Me, you don't need to cut it, I'll cut it myself. She pursed her mouth. Sister, just let me cut it. Did I apologize to you just now? Do you still have to be unforgiving? I stopped what I was doing. What are you pretending to? Isn't it hard to squeeze the tears? How much is your apology worth? Her eyes changed. He. So what? You know, sister, brother Jeremy Ellen can't see me crying, said and squatted on the side of the coffee table. If you don't let me join you, then I have to join. And if you don't let me cut your birthday cake, then I have to cut it. But she just wanted to get the plastic knife for cutting the cake, and I got the knife in a second faster than her. It's just that I didn't expect her to come and grab it directly, change the weak image just now, and act like a madman. One accidentally got my face scratched. I touched it, and there was blood in my chin. She was stunned for a moment. Your face. I slapped her without thinking. The voice was crisp and loud. You don't have stomach cancer. You have brain cancer. What's wrong? What's wrong? Jeremy Ellen hurried in. That's what I saw. Alberta George's bean-sized teardrops were like beads of broken thread, covering half of her beaten face and saying, Brother Jeremy Ellen, I accidentally scratched my sister's face. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I walked over and lifted her collar. Can you stop crying when you encounter anything? Stand up and speak clearly. All right, Venus Surrey, you're enough. Jeremy Ellen snapped out and interrupted my explanation, and immediately took Alberta George behind him, as if I were some kind of flood beast. She's dying. What are you doing with her? The doctors have said she can't be stimulated. He looked at me with disappointed eyes, shaking his head. Do you know how many days she has left? It's such a fuss about this little wound. Don't you just have a little skin on your chin? Isn't it more important than her life? If you say that you were disappointed in him before, now he was completely disgusted, and wanted to put his head in the cake so that he could sober up. Alberta George isn't dead yet. Jeremy Ellen, who used to have eyes full of me and carried more than anyone else, had already died thoroughly. I grabbed the cake and smashed it in his face. Break up. Jeremy Ellen coldly threw down a sentence. Divide it. If you don't say these two words, I will say it. The loud closing of the door was followed by a deathly silence. With me, you will never be wronged. That's what Jeremy Ellen said to me before. But unfortunately, my biggest grievance also happened to come from him. I slowly squatted down in front of the sofa, perhaps because of the grievances I was full of at the moment, or maybe it was the disappointment that had been accumulated for a long time, and the tears finally broke the embankment. But after crying for half an hour, the doorbell rang again. I thought it was Jeremy Ellen, and wasn't going to go out. Will you get the hell out of me? It's noisy. However, the next second, it was Drew Richards' familiar voice. It's me, Drew Richards. I pulled out a few tissues, and wiped my tears from my eyes, straightened his bangs at the reflective phone screen, and opened the door as if nothing had happened, smiled at him. Brother, why are you here? I just sent a message downstairs, and you didn't reply, so I came up to look for you. I didn't look at my phone just now. I opened the door and turned to go inside. I don't want him to see my red eyes. But his wrist was suddenly grabbed by him. He led me to him. Why are you crying? The smile on the man's lips vanished. In its place was anger. Who caused the wound on the face? Jeremy Ellen. Or that female friend of his? I looked at him and told him about that had just happened. He gently wiped the corners of my eyes with his fingertips, and after detoxifying the small wound on my chin, he pulled me into his arms. Listen to me. This garbage isn't worth crying about. Soon, he got a call. Okay, I'll go now. I thought he had something to go, and I bowed my head in some frustration. But I didn't expect him to go to the door to get the cake. And he had a bouquet of my favorite tulips in his hand, and handed it to me. Congratulations on throwing away a piece of garbage today. Happy birthday, Venus Surrey. I think I cried enough before he came. I couldn't help but cry after he came. But when I heard his words, I finally couldn't help crying. Only this time, it's not for Jeremy Ellen. Instead, I heard this long-awaited title that was unique to me. Once upon a time, he liked to call me Venus Surrey. At that time, I was still in elementary school, and I was bullied and cried by the chubby boy in the yard. He got me back on the field, but I kept crying. Venus Surrey, don't cry. When he saw that he couldn't coax me, he deliberately called me by my name. Okay, Venus Surrey. Dinner, Venus Surrey. Don't go home yet, Venus Surrey. I'm used to him calling me that. On the day he left, he stood in front of the car window, bent over, and rubbed my head. I'll call my brother often in the future, Venus Surrey. The other side, Jeremy Ellen took Alberta George to his home, and calmed her down for a while. Alberta George, brother Jeremy Ellen. Or I'd better go down and apologize to Sister Venus Surrey. She looks like she's angry. You didn't mean it in the first place. She actually slapped you directly. She really went too far this time. 12 o'clock in the evening. Alberta George finally managed to appease him, and slept in his guest room. The doorbell rang suddenly. His first reaction was that Venus Surrey was coming. But he's still angry. And if Venus Surrey comes to apologize to him, he won't be going to accept it for the time being. With that in mind, Jeremy Ellen walked to the entrance. However, as soon as he opened the door, before he could see the person who was coming, he felt a fist hit his cheek hard, and it was hot. He covered half of his face in pain. Only then did he see the appearance of the angry man in front of him. It was Drew Richards. Brother, what are you doing? Did I provoke you? Who is your brother to you, and you don't know what you've done? Didn't pour out the water in your head? Jeremy Ellen remembers that Drew Richards rarely speaks, and it was the first time I'd seen him so angry. As soon as his mind turned, Jeremy Ellen took 2 more punches, and as he dodged, he said, Okay, I understand that you want to vent Venus Surrey's anger as a brother. But you listen to me explain. Don't mess with Venus Surrey if you're not in your right mind. I'm not in the slightest interested in your explanation. You are unreasonable. I still treat you as a brother. But Drew Richards didn't listen to him at all, and he left after the beating. After Jeremy Ellen was beaten fat, he was extremely unhappy. To be honest, if it weren't for his work under Drew Richards, he would never have fought back and scolded just now. But after thinking about it carefully, he really lost money in this matter. At Venus Surrey's house, he was really not dealing with it properly, and Alberta George, who was only thinking about cancer, could not be stimulated. But he didn't take into account that Venus Surrey's chin was also scratched, and it was normal for a girl to care about her face. But he had been thinking about Alberta George's stomach cancer lately. There was still a faint pain in the beaten place on his face, and he scratched his hair irritably at the thought of this. Forget it, leave her alone for now. Let the 2 of them calm down with each other and talk about it until she is gone. When the time comes, he will buy an expensive gift to coax her, and it shouldn't be a big problem. Venus Surrey, wake up in the morning. I felt refreshed like never before. The curtains were opened, and the distant sky was white. Thanks to Drew Richards, I will remember my 25th birthday in the future. And there was still a very happy part. He stayed with me last night, chatting with me and relieving me. It wasn't until I got sleepy in the second half of the night that I fell asleep on the couch unconsciously. It's just that I woke up in bed. The living room was quiet. He was still lying on my couch, his long legs slightly bent, one hand on his forehead, silent as a silent star stone. I hurried into the room and got a thin blanket and put it lightly on top of him. I slipped into the kitchen and prepared to cook 2 bowls of noodles. As soon as he got inside, Drew Richards' voice came from behind him. It's amazing. Now I know how to cook noodles. I turned my head, and the man was leaning against the door frame, smiling very softly. Generally average. The 3rd in the world. I smiled too, but I don't guarantee it tastes good. I used to stay at his house for a while. On weekends, Drew Richards cooks breakfast, and he usually cooks me noodles to eat, and I just wait in the living room for him to make them. By the way, I'm going to move in 2 days. Do you have any good places to recommend? Yes, He walked up to me. It's up to you to like it or not. The apartment I live in now was found by Jeremy Ellen and Jeremy Ellen when they graduated. Jeremy Ellen offered to live together at that time, but I didn't say yes. After all, I had only been talking to him for half a year. So in the end, he was on the 7th floor, and I lived on the 10th floor. It's just that now, I feel extremely uncomfortable staying in the same building with him. I blocked and deleted all of Jeremy Ellen's contact information. With the help of Drew Richards, I quickly moved out of the apartment. He and his, Alberta George, should be locked up for the rest of their lives, and no one should harm anyone else. Finding the right house is not an easy task. Drew Richards asked me to stay with him for the time being, and I was a little hesitant. Wouldn't it be inconvenient to live with you? After all, we're all older now. He certainly has a life of his own. I'm not the kind of person who doesn't know how to measure. He smiled and said, you didn't find it inconvenient for you to live in my house for 10 years, and now let you live for a while before you find a house. But it is inconvenient to deal with me. Okay, then I'll stay at your house first. I didn't shirk it anymore. I had a bit of a lot of luggage, and I was worried that his house would not be able to accommodate it, but it turned out that I was thinking too much. His home is a quiet villa community located in the downtown area, and it is more than enough for me to live in one more. Before I arrived, he cleaned up a room, bought a new 3-piece bed suit, arranged everything very thoughtfully, and then helped me put the mess back in place. Finally, he handed me 2 keys, a key to the door of the house, and a key to my own room, and I've become more and more convinced that it's a good thing to be separated from Jeremy Ellen. It's just the right time for his little green plum to be a demon. Otherwise I really wouldn't be able to see him so quickly. I resigned. Of course, this was not my impulse, but a plan to change jobs. After quitting his job, Drew Richards drove me on road trips to other cities. My mood of being crumpled into a ball of paper also slowly unfolded in the beautiful scenery on the road. The night I came back, I went to find my best friend, who was a part-time resident singer at a bar. I sat on the booth and drank, and she sang a song, Happy Breakup, for me on stage. When she was done, she came back with me. Men are creatures everywhere, and Jeremy Ellen is not missing. With every scolding, we'll make a toast. Soon, I couldn't drink more than her. If you don't drink it, you won't drink it, and if you drink it again, you'll vomit. I want to scold him a few more words. You can't do it, I'll send you back. So she came to help me, but then my phone rang, and she took it out and looked. Brother, I'll take it for you. I don't know what she told him, but Drew Richards came over very quickly. When I got out of the car, I was thin-skinned and didn't want him to hug me, and I finally arrived at the door of the house crookedly. But the moment the elevator opened, I was suddenly lifted up by him, and he put me on the soft sofa. I grabbed his arm. Hey, don't you men like to have a good sister? He crouched down beside me and took off my shoes. You're drunk. I'm not drunk, Drew Richards. I won't get drunk if you're drunk. You tell me. Do you have a lot of good sisters out there? Or am I your good sister too? I don't know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't have been able to say that on a normal day. Are you still thinking about Jeremy Ellen? I didn't think about him. I just thought of it out of nowhere. Emotions welled up in his eyes. You don't think I treat you as a sister, do you? Isn't it? The air was silent for a long time. Drew Richards looked down at me. You didn't ask me if men like to have a good sister. Then I can answer you, he said, looking me deep into the eyes. No, I never wanted to be a good brother. Never before. Before or after, I don't know what to say. But his eyes were so depressed, so crazy. It makes me feel like I should kiss him at this moment. That's what I did. I pressed the corner of his lips and kissed him gently. What do you want to be, me? Drew Richards. He was stunned for a moment, and his Adam's apple rolled down. By the time I could react, I had been pressed into the couch by his shoulders. When I was almost out of breath, he pulled away from me for a while. Against the tip of my nose, if you kiss me, doesn't that mean you already know? When I woke up in the morning, the back of my head was heavy, and my head was a little dizzy. Turned around and was about to continue sleeping, but suddenly met the Drew Richards' chest. The man leaned sideways to face me, and the outline of his collarbone and pectoral muscles was clearly visible. My heart couldn't help but beat a little faster. Shhhh. The image of kissing him slowly came to my mind. I kissed on the sofa first. I was confused by his kiss, and then he carried me to the bed and continued to kiss. Help! These should be my dreams. I got up and came out of the living room, poured a glass of cold water. I touched my face, and it was clean. He even helped me remove my makeup, with a pair of strong arms wrapped around his waist. Drew Richards hugged me behind his back and said in a languid voice, "Awake." Well, my head hurts a little. The sun is just right outside the window. The breeze is gentle, and the screen is gently swaying, but my heart was beating fast. "Come and sit with me." He sat me in the space between his legs and leaned against his chest. The knuckles pressed slowly and rhythmically against the sides of my temples. The nice smell of sandalwood on his body came over him. "Are you comfortable?" "Well, it's much more comfortable." After washing, I went out for breakfast with him. I pretended to be casual and asked, "By the way, was that what happened to us yesterday?" He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "That's it." He laughed a little wickedly and pulled me into his arms. "I don't remember. Do you want to demonstrate?" He sighed, pulled me into his arms and kissed me for a while, saying, "Yesterday you were the first to do this, and now you regret it. Is it a little too late? Did I come first?" He laughed angrily. "I should have recorded everything from yesterday, so that you don't have to pay as much as you do now." "I don't regret it, I'll just confirm it. We're close." "There's nothing like that. I don't like to take advantage of people's danger." I felt a heat on my face. This rascal has misinterpreted what I mean. What doesn't mean that? Actually, I liked you when I was in high school. No kidding. Has such a handsome brother? I wasn't his own sister, so I had a crush on him at that time. It's just that when I was a junior in high school, my mom said to me, "Your brother Drew Richards' girlfriend is very beautiful, and you can just look at him." I cried for a week before I managed to calm down and cut off my liking for him. I just didn't expect it. Go round and round. The idea of a 17-year-old sprouted at the age of 25. Jeremy Ellen has just received good news. That is, when Alberta George went to check again, she found that her condition had miraculously improved. He firmly believes that it must be his own company that plays a role. I'm going to take her to a good meal and celebrate it. The restaurant was particularly popular, with 2 rows of waiters sitting in front of the door, and he and Alberta George also sat down. At this time, he suddenly noticed that the restaurant opposite had closed down. It was the same restaurant he had eaten with Venus Surrey when he first asked Venus Surrey out. Venus Surrey. Thinking of this name, he was actually still angry in his heart. It is estimated that she still regrets breaking up with him. This is the first time he has had the biggest conflict with her. There was absolutely no way he would have bowed his head first. The person who did the wrong was not him. She was the one who made trouble unreasonably, and he had already made up his mind to dry her for 2 months, so that she would learn to reflect on herself. Just thinking about it, he turned on his phone and began to swipe the circle of friends. But with a brush, he swiped to Drew Richards' circle of friends posted last week. Stayed with her. He has a girlfriend. He narrowed his eyes to take a closer look. In the next second, he only felt a bolt from the blue. The woman snuggled in Drew Richards' arms was Venus Surrey, with her long black hair, her eyebrows and eyes full of smiles, kissing the side of the man's face, and the one on her body was still a men's shirt. Alberta George sensed that something was wrong with him, leaned over to look at his phone, and said in a cheerful tone, "Whoa, Sister Venus Surrey has found a new boyfriend. Her voice was excited like never before. Jeremy Ellen's brow was twisted into a deep Chuan character. I thought my sister didn't break up for a long time, and she wouldn't be in a relationship for a year or two, but I didn't expect to find a new boyfriend so soon. It seems that but he interrupted, don't you guess? She must have been mad at me on purpose. How is that possible? She kissed them all. At this time, the restaurant behind him announced the table. Alberta George took him by the arm and got up. Let's go, brother Jeremy Ellen. It's time for us. But Jeremy Ellen's face was not good looking, and his anxiety reached its peak at this moment. No, I'll have to ask. Alberta George, you eat first, and I'll come back to you when I ask clearly. It had been a long time since he had gone to Venus Surrey. The car was driving fast. One hand also texted Venus Surrey, "What's the matter with you?" But as soon as the message was sent, a dazzling red exclamation mark popped up next to it. He slammed his hand on the steering wheel. In a hurry, I took the elevator to the 10th floor of the apartment, but his hand was about to break, and Venus Surrey didn't even come to open the door for him. But when he knocked on the door for a long time and no one opened it, 2 policemen came. Without saying a word, the police pinned him to the ground. You are suspected of illegal harassment. Are you mistaken? It's my girlfriend living here. At this time, the door finally opened, but a strange woman came out. Comrade policeman, don't listen to his nonsense. I have only just moved here, and I don't know him at all. Jeremy Ellen was stunned, and he stretched out his arms to look inside. The furnishings were unfamiliar to him. Venus Surrey actually moved. He fell to his knees with weak legs. He spent the night in the police station. I don't want to believe that those photos are real. The police officers on duty at the police station looked at him amusedly, thinking that he had been let down by crying like this. But after listening to Jeremy Ellen's grumbling, that had nowhere to vent, one of the young policemen said to him, "From the policeman's point of view, I can only advise you to be sensible. From a man's point of view, I want to say you deserve it. Go to work on Mondays." Jeremy Ellen was in a daze. When his colleagues saw him, they asked, "Didn't you sleep well yesterday? Why are the dark circles under your eyes so heavy?" He forced a smile. "Ha ha ha. I stayed up late last night to play games. I finally managed to get through to the end of work." He heard the co-workers next to him whispering to you, "Whoa, the boss' girlfriend is here. Damn, it's really fake. The boss has a girlfriend." Yes, didn't you swipe his circle of friends? Didn't he post a photo with her girlfriend before? It's so likely that a little minion of my level will be added to the boss wishet. I'll take a look. It's really good looking. The eyes are so beautiful. Hey, Jeremy Ellen, would you like to take a look? Jeremy Ellen only felt a tingling in his heart. If you don't look at it, maybe it's fake. He still had his last hope. In case Venus Surrey is here to pick him up, it's not entirely out of the question. Thinking of this, Jeremy Ellen picked himself up, packed his things and walked out of the office. Venus Surrey stood in the hallway. In the hallway, neither she nor the hem of her skirt stopped for a moment, walked past him and walked straight to Drew Richards behind him. Jeremy Ellen clenched his fists. The person she came to find should have been him. Drew Richards. Why should he? Like a thief, he didn't even dare to speak directly to Drew Richards in the company, but followed them. Venus Surrey took Drew Richards' arm, and said something to him with a crooked eyebrow. It wasn't until the parking lot that he called Venus Surrey. Venus Surrey. When she turned her head to look at him, the smile disappeared, and her eyes were unfamiliar. You have something to do with us. Jeremy Ellen felt bitter in his heart. Why didn't you tell me when you were with him? Venus Surrey thought it was funny. Who are you? Who am I with and need to report to you? Venus Surrey. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were so angry. But Venus Surrey didn't listen to him at all and got into the car. And Drew Richards looked at him, as if he were looking at a joke. At that moment, he couldn't say anything. And the first time he took Venus Surrey to see Drew Richards, he felt that Venus Surrey looked at Drew Richards differently than everyone else. At that time, he was vaguely afraid. That's why he tries his best to describe Drew Richards as a prodigal son in love. Because Venus Surrey hates emotionally ambiguous men the most. Now, he slapped himself twice in annoyance. He's the man who can't handle it clearly. When I got home, he found out that Alberta George did not know when he had come to his house. These are Venus Surrey's slippers. Don't wear hers. Alberta George gave him a timid look. What's wrong? It's no problem. Jeremy Ellen threw her briefcase on the couch irritably. I'll tell you something. Isn't your condition improving? You won't live in my house in the future. I've done all your wishes for you. You can move back to your own house quickly. Alberta George's eyes were red again. Jeremy Ellen felt that his tone was a little bad. I'm sorry. I just want to calm down. You can go back to your room first. He drank several beers and tried to numb himself with alcohol. As he was about to take a shower, he passed by Alberta George's room and wanted to ask her if she had packed her luggage, but overheard her talking to a friend on the phone. He stopped. What to do? He's going to kick me out again, and I regret saying I'm getting better. Then you just say that your stomach cancer has worsened again, and then use your acting skills to cry in front of him again, and the whole process will be done again. He won't be held to death by you. Alberta George just said yes. There was a loud bang behind him, and the door was pushed open. When she looked back and saw Jeremy Ellen standing in the doorway, her mind was actually clouded. So, what kind of stomach cancer did you lie to me? You've been playing me all this time. Alberta George tried to play dumb. No, brother Jeremy Ellen, you listen to me. Jeremy Ellen blasted her out. You make me feel like a joke. I don't want to see you again. 10 minutes later, the suitcase containing her clothes was thrown out. Never appear in front of me again. Also, if you have stomach cancer and it's fake, then I hope it will be real in the future. Alberta George knocked on the door for half an hour, and she felt like her tears were about to dry up. The next door was alarmed, but Jeremy Ellen still didn't come out. She tried to turn to the couple's neighbor. I was his girlfriend and he got into a fight with me and kicked me out. But the man said, no, I remember that the girlfriend of the guy next door is not like you. And I have the impression that she is much more beautiful than you. The woman had a blank eye. Alberta George, who had been listening to the quarrel between the two men next door for a while. You're a junior. Are you embarrassed to let us knock on the door for you? Be careful I take a picture of you and send it to the net. Alberta George only felt red-faced. Gray pulled up his suitcase and left. Jeremy Ellen couldn't stop working for days on end. In the end, he took the initiative to resign, and he hated Drew Richards in his heart. Naturally, he is no longer willing to work under him. It was late at night again, and he flipped through the photo album with Venus Surrey, and the more he thought about it, the more unwilling he became, and the more he thought about it, the more unpleasant he felt in his heart. He raced all the way to Drew Richards' house. When I got out of the car, I didn't bother to hold an umbrella, and I rushed into the rain curtain in the rain. At that time, Drew Richards' phone prompted him that his villa's smart people recognized that someone was lingering at his door. He glanced at Venus Surrey, who was sleepy-eyed beside him. He clicks on the live video on the Smart People app. It was pouring rain outside the eaves, and a drenched man stood in the doorway. It was Jeremy Ellen, who rang the doorbell frantically. Venus Surrey, are you in there? You were in a hurry that afternoon. Can you come out and have a good talk? I know you're deliberately angry with me, so I'll apologize to you. Okay. Jeremy Ellen rubbed her drenched hair back of her head, looking embarrassed. Drew Richards, you come out and make it clear. I believed you to let you help take care of Venus Surrey. You helped her get angry and beat me up. But what do you mean by prying my wall? Drew Richards looked at the person in the video with a cold look in his eyes. He's really haunted. He got up and walked out of the room, gently closing the door. I made a phone call. Soon, Jeremy Ellen was taken away by the security guards, who arrived on the way, because Jeremy Ellen had been here to look for Drew Richards before, and the security guard knew that he was a friend of Drew Richards, so he just let him go. It's just that he didn't expect that Drew Richards, a friend, would come and go crazy late at night. I don't know. I thought Drew Richards had robbed him of his girlfriend. While the security guard was worried about his job, he also lamented in his heart that a figure of Drew Richards' level would also make friends carelessly. Gee, the security guard said, brother, it's useless for you to make trouble until dawn. Go back quickly. If you don't go back, we will call the police. Jeremy Ellen left. He wandered aimlessly through the streets, passing by the most bustling street in the city center. The luxuriously decorated commercial building is inlaid with a huge display screen. There are many people who are looking there now, and he also stops and looks up. After just one glance, his face turned pale. Congratulations to Mr. Drew Richards on his engagement to Ms. Venus Surrey. May 100 years of kinks go to Bay together. Inform the whole city that tomorrow there will be an engagement banquet for the beloved. Wow, they're such a good match. Handsome men and beautiful women. Drew Richards is the second son of the Richards family. Damn, and a handsome guy who got married young. Woo woo. But I heard that they are childhood sweethearts, and the two have no guesses. Someone photographed. Under that display, there was a lost man standing below. The umbrella was not propped up, and he looked like a clown. Drew Richards' first summer vacation in college. It was also the summer when Venus Surrey had just finished his college entrance exam. He had all plans to take Venus Surrey on a trip to the city that was close to her heart. But I haven't had time to set off yet. He received a text message from her. Brother, I have a boyfriend. I won't use this number in the future. He refunded the ticket he was going to find her. He didn't want to admit it, but had to admit that she really seemed to think of him as an older brother. And he has thoughts about her that he shouldn't have. The next time I saw her, it was at an insignificant party, and she was just as he expected. And she looked slim. The moment he saw her, he was actually unprecedentedly surprised in his heart, and he couldn't wait to hug her. But there was a very unsightly person beside her. It was the first time he had seen Jeremy Ellen so unpleasant. It's so ridiculous that I wish he could just disappear from this world. It's useless. They're already together. He's more of an outsider. So, he could only pretend to be indifferent. Just afraid that after recognizing her, he couldn't help but cross the line and disturb her, and this, presumably, will only add to her troubles? Fortunately, God gave him a chance. Jeremy Ellen wasn't a good match for her. He was indignant at the man's shameful behavior of pretending to be foolish, and glad that he had the opportunity to love her openly again. It seems that he has made the same New Year's wish for the past 7 years. Which is somewhat effective. He could finally tell her, too. In fact, he was so infatuated with her. Thinking of this, he leaned over and kissed her forehead. Where did you just go? Did someone come? Venus Surrey was sleepy-eyed. No one. You can sleep in peace. I'm scared to death. It's raining so hard outside. She shrunk into his arms, rubbing against his neck. Hurry up. My abs touch me and crush the scare. Drew Richards couldn't help her. He grabbed her hand and whispered in her ear. Tomorrow we are engaged. Do you want to save some energy? Venus Surrey's hand was immediately honest. It's still raining outside, but in his arms, it was more reassuring than ever. Let's go down. Let's go down. After that, tomorrow it will rain, and the sky will be clear. The end.